Hello again, fellow podcaster, and welcome back to Pod Theory. As always, this is your host, Jason Cercone. And on episode 3, I mentioned a few statistics that showcase why podcasting is so popular. Today, on episode 4, I'd like to take a closer look at those numbers, and we're going to explore some 2020 statistics that prove that the podcast business is booming. Now, these statistics are courtesy of our friends over at musicoomph.com, and I'm going to post a link to the article that displays all of the statistics that we're going to talk about today, plus many more. The overall collection of these statistics has one overarching theme, and that is that podcasting is absolutely on fire, and you absolutely need to consider starting your show if you haven't done so already. And if you've been wondering if it's time to cancel your show, the answer is no. Now is the time to double down, and you've come to the right place if you're looking for ways to improve your show. Again, today it's all about some statistics that show that podcasting is where it's at. It is the best content medium out there, and it is one of the best ways for you to build brand visibility. So let's dive into these numbers a little deeper. Now, as of July 2020, when these numbers came out, there were more than 850,000 active podcasts with over 30 million episodes and content in over 100 languages. And since then, as this podcast goes live in late September, we have eclipsed over 1 million active, which is just a phenomenal number. And again, as mentioned in past episodes, that number is going to continue to climb. 70% of the United States population are familiar with the term podcasting. 51% of the United States population have listened to a podcast. You're in that statistic because you're listening to this podcast. 32% of the United States population listen to podcasts at least every month. 22% of the United States population listen to podcasts weekly, and 6% of the United States population are avid podcast fans that listen almost daily. Now think about that. People are driving to work every day. People are active every day in regards to working out or taking a walk. People are at home. You think about these numbers and the increase that they've had over the past few months. I attribute a lot of it to COVID-19. People were in quarantine. They were looking for ways to pass the hours as they were on lockdown in their homes. So many great podcasts were not only created and produced and published in that time frame, so many were discovered and consumed by people that had a lot of time on their hands to consume podcasts. So as things start to slowly move towards this quote-unquote new normal, the popularity that podcasting has gained in that time frame is going to continue to spread. There's no way this takes a step backwards. So those numbers show right there that more people are finding podcasts by the day, and you need to be a part of that movement. Now, smartphones are the number one medium for podcast consumption. 54% of the United States smartphone audience is on the Apple system, so they use the Apple Podcast podcatcher. 43% are on Android, and 3% are on others. The biggest takeaway from that is you absolutely want to have your show on Apple Podcasts. It's the number one platform for getting your podcast discovered, and clearly with over 50% of active podcast users utilizing that platform, it's where you want to be. The good news is when you set up an account through Buzzsprout and host your podcast through there, you can set up a direct link to not only Apple Podcasts, but over a dozen podcast catchers that are going to be able to reach the listener. But again, Apple Podcasts is key. 49% of podcast listening is done at home. Now, that was a statistic that I found very surprising because in my mind, I'm in the car, and that's pretty much all I do is listen to podcasts. If I'm at the gym, I'm listening to podcasts. Typically, I'm not at home when I'm listening to podcasts. Every now and then, depending on what I'm doing, yes. But in my mind, my thought was people were out and about as they were listening to podcasts. But as the statistics from Music Oomph have proven, people are listening at home as well. 22% of people listen while they're driving. 11% listen while they're at work. 4% listen while they're riding public transportation. 4% listen while they're working out, 3% listen while walking around, and 7% listen in other situations. I mentioned in episode 3, one of the reasons why podcasts are so popular is because they're a passive medium. So everything that I just listed showcases just that. You don't have to be sitting with complete focus to absorb the content that's coming at you. You can be doing different activities while you listen to podcasts. So that gives you another big reason why this is a platform that you want to be a part of. Now, I'm going to close this down today with a very good statistic that, again, showcases the power of podcasting. 80% of the listeners of a podcast will listen to an entire episode or most of any given episode that they download. That's huge. And you think about, again, I'm comparing this to when you jump onto a blog and you start reading an article. How often do you tap out in the first couple paragraphs? If you didn't get grabbed, you're out. Same with a video. If you don't get grabbed in the first few seconds, you keep on scrolling. This statistic is showing that people, once they find a podcast and the content has grabbed them, they're going to listen to just about all of it, if not all of it. So again, these numbers have nowhere to go but up. And each and every statistic that I just shared with you stresses the reason why your brand needs a podcast. Now, again, I'm going to post the link to these statistics, and there's many more that are included with these on the Music Oomph website. I want to thank them for taking the time to compile all this data, and please go check that out today so you can learn more. And again, remember, that was as of July 2020. Those numbers have nowhere to go but up, and they will continue to do so. So that's going to wrap up this session of Pod Theory. Don't forget to pick up my free podcast primer at jasoncercone.com/podcast primer and start building your podcast with confidence and with purpose. Until we meet again next time, this has been Jason Cercone on Pod Theory.